everyone, and welcome to the 23rd episode of Viral Banter. Today, we are joined once again by four amazing members of the Generation Liberty team. First up, let's welcome to the show from the University of Adelaide, Georgia.
Hi, Renee. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you for coming on the show again. And hot off the press, or hot from the debate, comes Luca from Monash University.
G'day, Renee. Thanks for having me on. And yes, that was definitely a heated debate.
Yeah, it was a fiery exchange, which we definitely will be discussing on today's show. And next up, my always insightful and wonderful assistant, Theodora.
Hi, Renee. Great to see you, and thanks for having me back on the show.
And all the way from Wollongong University, which is actually not that far from me right now, probably my closest campus, the fabulous Boston.
Oh, thank you, Renee. Hi. Good to be back.
Good to have you on the show again, Boston. And as you all know, a lot happened last week. And Luca, I would just like to start with you, as the biggest topic in Gen Lib circles has been the debate against the Socialist Alternative. Most of the comments I've heard from coming from our side is that it was remarked upon about how cool, calm and collected that you and Pumica stayed throughout the debate, whilst the other side tended to get quite heated, few personal attacks. But overall, it was an interesting debate to watch. What were the best parts of the debate for you?
Oh, look, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the debate getting heated. It's when your argument boils down to everything about you is bad and we don't like you. That's not much of a debating strategy, in my personal opinion. I don't know. Maybe they seem to think it worked, but it really didn't. Probably the best part, though, was when Gideon actually defended Pumica and I, because they called us inbreds. They called us inbreds, and he actually defended us. I'm really proud of Gideon for that, and I really thank him for it. He said that we were multicultural and multilingual, and that it was really racist for them to come at us like that. I really felt that, I really felt like Gideon was trying to protect us from the tyranny of these racists and bigots. It was really great.
Yeah, he also guilted them for dead naming you as a proud multilingual Australian. True. Amazing response there from Gideon to watch. But I was also thinking throughout the debate, there's kind of something that Peter Hitchens talks about with debates, is it's very hard to debate someone who despises you. And there's something about the left these days where they not only believe they're right, they believe they're morally superior, and that if you believe anything else, you must be a bad human being. And it's really, really hard to kind of debate with someone on those terms, because they're not coming to you at kind of an even kill, wanting to learn from you or wanting to bounce off you. They just want to destroy you because you're evil. But Georgia, I'm guessing you watched the debate as well. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, it was my first time watching one of these Generation Liberty debates, and I will tell you, I was not disappointed. I was so impressed by our guys. I thought, like you were saying, they were super calm, super collected, amidst all of the personal attacks. It felt very similar to what you'd usually see on our campus as well, when the socialists come at us a bit. It's the classic, like, you start one-upping them on the argument and they go straight for the personal digs. And like you're saying, it's so hard to just kind of rise above it, but the guys did such a good job.
Yeah, I think you guys did a really good job. I don't think I personally would have been able to keep myself from making a personal jab back at them. So I really commend you for not doing that. But Boston, what did you find was some of the most ridiculous arguments that the socialists made?
I'm going to echo George's point, and that is that they straight away they just made personal jabs, which in my opinion is you only make a personal jab when you don't have anything else to argue, and that you've actually just lost, and now that you're trying to recuperate and try and attack the other side by just making those personal jabs. That was one of the ridiculous things that I found about the debate. The other thing was they didn't even talk about socialism. I kept on expecting them to say this is how the economy will work under a socialist regime or socialist structure. All they did was attack capitalism, and most of their arguments were false anyway. It's just like I did not hear a single thing about, well, besides 10 seconds about a democratic workers' council. That's about it. So I ran away from that debate thinking I haven't learned anything about socialism.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. They had to remember that the topic of the debate was capitalism is better than socialism. So you could still lose that debate and prove that capitalism is horrible. The way to win was to actually prove that socialism was equal or better. And they really didn't do that by not actually proposing what their socialist model would look like. I think one of the most ridiculous arguments I heard, which was the first speaker for the socialist side at one point, because she was just screaming throughout, just said, if capitalism is so great, why do people resist? Why do people continuously like rise up against capitalism? I'm like, you know, we could just flip that argument so easily. Socialism is so great. Why do people flee from socialist countries continuously? Why do people flee to capitalist countries? Like, the opposite argument was just so obvious that it was absolutely bizarre that she brought that up. But Theodora, what were some of your favorite parts of this debate as well?
Look, there were a lot of very interesting moments. Some of the ones that I found most memorable included when, was it Priya? I think the first speaker on their team, she just started absolutely screaming, Venezuela is not socialist, and it's disgusting to even suggest that the suffering in Venezuela is caused by socialism. And I was just sitting there thinking, oh, I wonder what people in Venezuela would say to that one. And then another one, when I think it was their knockoff version of Luca that was on their team, he said something like, our world is getting more defined by border walls and prisons, and socialism is somehow going to fix that, which implied that prisons are exclusively a capitalist idea and that there are no prisons under socialism. So I was like, gulags? Ever heard of them?
Comrade, where is Gulag?
Allow me to introduce you to the concept of labor camps in Siberia. And so there were just like a lot of similar moments in that vein that demonstrated like genuinely shocking historical illiteracy, I thought, for university students. And I feel like at this point, I shouldn't really be surprised that proponents of socialism keep trying to deny the horrors that socialism causes, but I can never get over the stupidity of the arguments. Like, yeah, Venezuela is actually a capitalist country, guys. Did you know that?
Oh, no, I was actually in one of these debates with Socialist Alternative, and they called North Korea capitalist.
That's a good one.
Yeah, guys. In case you didn't know, North Korea is a capitalist nation. Good to know, Socialist Alternative.
That's why they have so much electricity.
Yeah, heaps of electricity there. But I also found it really bizarre that Venezuela argument, oh, it's not really socialist. Do you know what I want to ask them? Were you supporting them during the socialist uprising and when it was first becoming socialist? Because I bet you they were all like, oh, yeah, so like Venezuela's doing an amazing job, like behind Jeremy Corbyn, like they're showing us a new way of how our society should be structured. It's really awesome. And then when it fails, oh, suddenly it's not socialism when it fails. So convenient, such a convenient way to, just throw out the bad examples of the system that is obviously going to fail. But something that I found quite astonishing during this debate, which Boston has brought up, was that, the Socialist Alternative did not give a positive argument for socialism at all and how socialism would work. Rather, they based everything off how bad capitalism was. And Luca, I really hope that you're still not holding your breath to hear the solution of the knowledge problem and how the economics is going to work in the socialist society, because they never answered that question, did they?
I'm sorry to disappoint you, Renee, but I actually died about 2 weeks ago and I'm currently a ghost. It was really interesting because we kept bringing up that point, like, how is your system going to work, right? And then, like, the knockoff Lucas speech, as Theodora said, his speech consisted of about 9 minutes of capitalism bashing and then about 10 seconds of him actually saying what socialism will do. And as Boston said, it boiled down to just democratically running the system. It's like, okay, well, what are you going to do about what mechanisms are you going to put in place to, make production as efficient as possible? How are you going to get people to innovate? That kind of stuff. None of it was there. None of it was there at all. And I just like to bring it back to this one point as well, because you were saying, Renee, it's really hard to debate people who hate you, right? And let's be clear here. Those were their words, because after the debate, as soon as they stopped the live stream, their first speaker came out and turned on her microphone and said, "Oh, I'd just like to say I find you guys repulsive." And then the other guy said, "Oh yeah, you guys are losers," right? It's like, you're not coming in to have an actual debate. You're coming in just to, I swear they were just trying to start the workers' revolution like then and there, the way that they were screaming. It was just, they were there just so that they could have some kind of extra platform. That was really it. There was no kind of back and forth, nothing like that. And they really did hate us. And that begs the question, I'm a worker. Do I not get to be part of the revolution now? Just because you don't like me? Hang on. So which workers are allowed to be part of the revolution now? Right? Come on. Like, what about bank clerks? Oh no, they work for banks, therefore they're evil. They don't get to be part of the revolution. And it was just really interesting to see how hypocritical they were. Because on the one hand, they'd be like, big government, bad militarized police. But on the other hand, they'd be like, but my housing commission, right? And then on one hand, they'd go, socialism isn't about violence. On the other hand, the guillotine is inspirational. And I'm glad they brought that outside of Bezos's house, right? It's like, what is your point, right? And then and it was always just coming back to, we have to start the revolution, overthrow the governments and violence and chaos, and we will all live in this great utopia. That was it. There was no economic policy. There was no nothing. And as soon as their first speaker started speaking or screaming, it just devolved so quickly, so quickly. But yes, look, we're not going to get any good economic policy out of the socialists because there are no good socialist economic policies. So I'm still going to continue holding my breath.
Well, don't pass out on the show today, Luca. But yeah, I always find these ones really frustrating because I've participated in these debates in the past, and I just feel like yelling at them, you are not the working class. You are the bourgeoisie. Like, I had this girl yelling at me about how I'm like some elitist privileged girl, and I found out afterwards she had a Porsche and she went to a private school, and I'm like, I went to public school and I grew up in commission housing, so how are you a worker and I'm the bourgeoisie in this example? It's just absolute madness. And I just think that in their heads, I don't know, it's like this, this guilt from growing up middle class, because I never really come across many of these socialist alternative who are actually from a really, really poor background and have actually struggled through genuine poverty. It generally seems to be coming from this kind of middle class in my experience. And also, yes, you are bourgeoisie in the way that you live your life. A lot of them have been at university for over 3 years, sometimes over 4 years, sometimes over like 7 years, doing one subject at a time just to keep Socialist Alternative going. Being a professional student does not equal worker. It equals privileged. So it's very, very frustrating to debate people like that. But Theodora, the first speaker passionately claimed she was not a democratic socialist, but a Trotskyist. An important difference between a Trotskyist is they do not believe in the democratic parliamentary system to make change. Rather, they rely on revolutions of the working class itself. They believe that the bourgeoisie hinder the advancement of the industrial working class, and so it's only them who can control the means of production, but also run the country as well. So can you just talk us through some of the shortcomings of this system? Because a lot of pretty much anyone you come across who's kind of a revolutionary socialist on campus these days would claim that they're a Trotskyist, that Trotsky was kind of, the nice guy from the Soviet era. I actually have come across one Stalinist in my time, and I actually appreciated their honesty, if I'm going to say anything. But what do you think of the failings of this system?
Yeah, well, I guess the obvious problem inherent with the Trotskyist beliefs of that first speaker and of the fellow Trotskyists, it's just the assumption that the working class itself is going to want a revolution. And as we've seen throughout history, the revolutionary sentiment, it's rarely come from the working class themselves, and they always end up suffering under communism. So I guess it's pretty predictable that you have this group of university educated people who are they're just toying with socialism and Trotskyism as if it's some sort of parlor game, and they're trying to convince the working class that they know what's better for the working class than the working class does themselves, right? It's the typical route of like stuck up intellectuals who don't have a grip on reality. And it does show basically just absolute ignorance of the hard text of the ideology that Trotsky believed in. But yeah, as you said, like, I guess what's most interesting about Trotsky is the fact that this afterlife exists, that he still has like these almost cultish adherents well into the 21st century. And Douglas Murray wrote about this earlier in the year. He said, like, why do people romanticize Trotsky's life and still follow his ideology in this very creepy way for me? And I guess that like people think he is the great might have been of the Soviet era. You know, people say, let's forget about the horrors, the experiences of people who actually grew up under the horrors of the Soviet system, you know, because if Trotsky had been in charge, things would have been so different. You know, like Trotsky wouldn't have been as bad as Stalin. Oh no, things would have been so much better. Stalinism wasn't real socialism, but Trotskyism definitely would have been. It's pretty laughable because, like, you know, even a brief glance as at the history books will tell you, from the start of the revolution until the day he died, in a very interesting way in Mexico, Trotsky was the most fanatical and dedicated of the communist leaders, and he was just as comfortable with the use of violence as any of the people around him. And he only became averse to violence when he discovered that he and his followers might be on the receiving end of Stalin's violence. So yeah, basically, Trotskyism is just a hideous blot on the intellectual landscape of 2020. And it's actually really saddening that there are any young people at all who still believe in its ideals and follow this pathetic attempt to repaint Trotsky as some kind of ideal communist leader.
Yeah, I think I really agree with you there. And I thought it was really strange when the Socialist Alternative started playing these kind of 7 degrees of separation with Generation Liberty. Like, Generation Liberty is part of the IPA, and the IPA back in the day, Menzies supported you. And then if we dig this up, we think that Menzies supported Hitler, which is historically doubtful. But you have to go through all these steps to be like, you guys actually support Hitler. And it's a very, very shaky argument. But we could just go directly to you support Trotsky. He was a really violent dude. You probably support Che Guevara. Really violent dude. We don't have to play games of separation here. You like proudly say that you support people who were incredibly violent. In the case of Che Guevara, you know, victimized, was incredibly racist, shot homosexuals in the head, like absolutely horrific human beings, and they just have no problem you know, associating themselves with that. It's just this real strange mindset that they have. But Georgia, the members of the Socialist Alternative immediately pigeonholed Luca and Pumica as Liberal Party hacks, and not as reasoned individuals, which led to an array of assumptions and disregarding of a lot of the points that Luca and Pumica made. Have you ever encountered similar stereotyping at university that some use to dismiss your points?
Yeah, I did notice that, and it's definitely something that's been a bit familiar to me. We've just had our student election week at Adelaide Uni, and very controversially, I run as a Conservative candidate for Women's Officer. And I cannot tell you how many times this week I've been called anti-women, a misogynist, like all of the above. And it's simply just because I was running on the Conservative ticket. No one wanted to know what I actually stood for or like what I planned to do if I got it, or, you know, anything like that. It was purely based on the stereotypes that they'd already decided who I was and what I stood for.
Yeah, that's really frustrating. Actually, at Sydney University a few years ago, a joint kind of ticket finally took control away from the far left at student council. And with the women's officer, they had this thing called collective ownership. So you had to, in their rules, they said you had to consult the collective about who's going to be the women's officer, even though the women's collective was just run by a bunch of socialists. So obviously the people who won were not going to consult them on who they would put up. And they put up this girl who was a complete centrist, was not, either side, you would say. And they lost it completely. And I'm just going to say, allegedly, we don't know who did this. We don't know how it happened. But in the middle of their tantrum, the fire alarms went off and the sprinkler system turned on. So the meeting had to be cancelled. And they almost damaged like thousands upon thousands of year-old Egyptian artifacts that were held in that building. No one ever got caught and punished for this, and it still annoys me to this day.
The moral arrogance of it.
Yeah. We're not getting our way. So allegedly, because we don't have proof, someone set off the fire alarms and set off the sprinklers. But apparently it was, it just happened accidentally, or but even though there was clearly physical damage to the alarm system, absolutely ridiculous. But Boston, have you encountered similar kind of stereotyping? Oh, you're a liberal, or you believe this, so that means X at university?
Yeah, of course, and I find it really ironic because I used to be much more left-wing. My family are pretty lefties, like are all pretty left-wing as well. And so my journey towards libertarianism, classical liberalism, started because I view people as individuals. And this is what the left does. The left likes to view people as if they're a collective, as if we're all the same, like this group, like Aboriginal people, a certain type of group, when actually there's a lot of different types of Aboriginal people and different cultures within Aboriginal society. So I don't understand the left's mentality to think that, we're just all liberals, and a lot of Generation Liberty members aren't even liberals, especially on my campus. The majority of them have never voted Liberal in their lives, will never support the Liberal Party. I, for one, am a Liberal Party member, but there's a lot of other people who are not Liberal Party people.
I think that something about this stereotyping would be there's this kind of certainty that especially radical left people want to see the world with. They want to be able to say this is this and that is that, and there's kind of no shades of grey. So it's much easier to do that if you kind of put people into collectives and stereotype. It's much easier to say that you are absolutely right and there's definitely no alternative, and the people on the other side are definitely wrong if you categorize and stereotype people and don't treat them on an individual basis. Because once you start treating people on an individual basis, you find that answers aren't that simple and there's lots of shades of grey in between, and things are complex. Go back to Jordan Peterson. Before you start trying to fix the economy and change the world, go and clean your room, because the economy is so amazingly complex and unimaginably complex that if you can't clean your room, I don't think you can handle that. And I think that is really a distorted. That's one of the reasons I think they came really hard after Jordan Peterson. And I remember at Q&A when he was on, how much they hated that kind of response. Was actually look after yourself first before you go and try and fix the whole world.
I'm pretty sure that lady who asked him the question about like, oh, how can you give us these banal comments? I recognized her because we had to vote for Melbourne City Council. I'm almost entirely sure she was running for the Socialist ticket. I'm almost entirely sure it's that same lady. We'll have to fact check, but I looked at that picture. I was like, I know that smug face. I know that face.
I love the response after that question. Well, it's kind of hard to give an answer to the question when it started with your comments are banal. I was actually in the audience for that Q&A, and it was a frustrating Q&A to watch live. And if you go back and listen to it, all my friends were messaging me like, I can hear you like cheering Jordan Peterson on the recording. So if you go and listen to it, you can probably hear the back going, woo!
I didn't know you at that stage, Renee, but I was also in the audience and I was like, who is that girl cheering so loudly? Yeah, yes, amazing. We love that there's a Jordan Peterson squad in there. And then I met you later in the year and I was like, oh, makes sense.
Okay, but talking about fierce battles, moving on to what's happening in the news this week. So this weekend, AFL and NRL Grand Finals were played. The AFL Grand Final was played far away in Brisbane due to the continuation of Victorian restrictions, while the NRL Grand Final remained in its home state of New South Wales. So I thought I would ask you all, what has been your favourite victory over the past few weeks? Now, these don't have to be strictly footy related, or they have to be footy related, but like not necessarily footy focused as well. And if you can't have a footy one, I'll take another victory. But for example, my favourite victory was the Brisbane Lions getting knocked out of the finals, so that Premier Palaszczuk didn't get the pleasure of having a home grand finals for the Lions after all the border restrictions that she has put up. And if you can't think of anything recently, I would like to hear about your favourite grand final memory from the past, because you know, lots of people in Victoria, well, everyone in Victoria, lost the opportunity to partake in a traditional grand final day bash. So if you have any memories of great parties and grand final memories from the past, I'd love to hear those too. So Boston, I think we'll start with you. What has been your favourite victory lately, or can you tell us about a past grand final memory or victory memory?
Well, it was actually when my memory is very recent, last week. So when the Panthers versus the Rabbitohs. Now, I'm a huge Rabbitohs fan, and I was with my stepmom and my two little brothers who are huge Panthers fans. And I'll give credit to the Panthers. They played extremely well. I was a little bit disappointed the Rabbitohs were losing, but we'll always have another try next year.
I think the Rabbitohs played a pretty good game as well. They held on for a very long time. The Panthers are a very young, fit and hard team to beat, and that was a really close game in the end. I think the Panthers did not play their best. They dropped the ball so much, and really were not playing at their best. So I think Rabbitohs did put in a good effort there. So Theodora, I know you're not much of a footy fan or a sports fan, but do you have perhaps a good victory memory from the past?
Yeah, well, I'm sad I'm not able to give you a footy-related memory because AFL and NRL aren't really our family sports, and my NFL team over in America has not been doing well this season. So I think instead I'll just give you a throwback to the inaugural IPA Academy Trivia Night in 2019. It was a beautiful, fantastic night, largely because my team won. So I remember that night. It's got a golden glow over it. The glow of victory. Our team name was Tasmania's Finest, which we picked because we had nobody on the team from Tasmania, and also the beer or cider that was available that night had the slogan Tasmania's Finest on it. And yeah, we managed to snatch victory from some very worthy competition, including Boston's team and Luca's teams. And yeah, it's a bit of a bittersweet memory because we were meant to have, obviously, a rerun this year, IPA Academy 2.0, and because of the lockdown restrictions, we haven't been able to have that. But, you know, the suspense is just going to make me look forward to next year's IPA Academy Trivia Night more, I guess.
You also beat, if you remember, John Roscombe's team, and he was very, very upset about that.
I know, he was very competitive. He's such a competitive guy. Every point was under scrutiny from him.
Yes, it was definitely a good and fun trivia night, and a great memory. But Luca, do you have any examples of great victories lately, or memories from the past about grand final days or past victories?
Oh, look, I'm still kind of buzzing that Richmond won. It's been quite the ride. And then on top of that, it was really great because my dad's a Collingwood supporter, and we all know what happened to them. It was good to be able to poke fun at him for it. But yeah, and then on top of that, there was also the debate, which I don't know, I consider a victory considering we actually had arguments. Yeah, look, this couple of weeks has been pretty good. Not gonna lie. Don't have to go much further back to come up with a good memory. So it's been fun.
So much winning. Are you getting sick of winning yet, Luca?
Not quite.
You're another Richmond supporter. Richmond is a very popular team at the IPA, and there are a lot of happy Richmond supporters around. If you tune into the Young IPA this week, I'm sure James Bolt will be wearing his Richmond scarf, and I think it's going to be hard to remove it from his neck for a few episodes after that. But I'm sure you're also going to rub that Collingwood loss into Pumica's face, because he is a very passionate Collingwood supporter. But Georgia, what are your past memories? What are your recent victories or memories of great victories from the past?
Well, Renee, I'm actually an Adelaide Crows fan, so I'm probably going to stick away from the footy this time. We all saw what happened with the Crows this year, which was very disappointing. So I'll stay right away from footy, I reckon. My favourite victory just recently, as I said, we had our student elections, and the left came hard at us this year, like on campus all day, every day, calling us racist, sexist, like the classics. And I can't tell you how good it was to see their faces when results came out. And not just one or two of our ticket got up, but our entire ticket rolled. It was absolutely amazing. And I'm so excited because we've actually got a Conservative hold on the union for next year. So it's going to be a really good year to come.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Are you going to try and leave the National Union of Students, do a little Adelaide Wexit?
We'll see what happens. We'll give it our best crack, I think, though.
Yes, I think Boston's University Wollongong did do that for a stage, and then when the left got in power, they reversed it, which was without a vote.
Without a referendum. We did a referendum, and the students voted to leave, and then they came along and they didn't give us the opportunity to vote if we wanted to rejoin NUS. It was just shameful, really.
Absolute shame. But great to hear those victories. I think if I'm going to mention one last victory for myself, it has to be the 2010 grand final where the Dragons won. I was actually at the grand final that day. So that was a pretty fun, crazy day. And me and my husband had attended every single home game for the Dragons that year and a couple of the away games in Sydney. So we had been following pretty intensely, sat through rain and sun and shine. And it was a really gratifying win to see that grand final that year. And it's crazy that that's 10 years ago now. It makes me feel old. But moving on to our next topic, he's already come up today. Gideon Rosner from the IPA, or as a lot of people in Generation Liberty call him, Uncle Gideon, made headlines after his new op-ed on New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, causing a screeching reaction from the Twitterati, with protesters hilariously starting to post a trend of Daniel Andrews or Jacinda holding cuddly animals and tagging Gideon's name in an effort to destroy his article's reach. Ironically, this actually increased the article's publicity, allowing Gideon to be the #1 trend on Twitter. Boston, what did you think of the article and the subsequent reaction?
I thought the article itself was really well written. Jacinda Ardern has this weird celebrity glow around her, and yet she's she can't implement most of her policies. And also too, during the last term, I found it quite ironic that she was very much revered by the left worldwide, yet she relied on the support of New Zealand's version of One Nation to stay in government. So I thought Gideon did really well in regards to the article, but to be honest, I don't look at Twitter. I don't think most people look at Twitter, so I don't really care what happens on Twitter. But it's not a surprise that Gideon became #1 trending, because as soon as the left tries to silence something, people want to know, what are they trying to silence? Like, they want to find out, like, what is trying to be silenced. It happens all the time.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. A lot of these things about shutting stuff down or trying to, block the reach of something generally kind of spin the other way and smack the left back in the face, which is quite funny to watch. But Theodora, never mind, as Gideon coins it, the incompetence across the ditch. What does the reaction on Twitter within the kind of the I Stand With Dan Brigade was one of the biggest groups to come after Gideon concerning this article. And it seems that they weren't really coming at him with any of the points that were in his article or trying to refute any of, anything with intellect and reason. Rather, they just kind of reacted in a screeching way, as they always do on Twitter. Is this more proof that this isn't really about truth anymore and rather about kind of a radical ideology that we kind of already saw on the debate itself earlier this week?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, the I Stand With Dan trend is kind of pathetic, because it basically shows like immaturity, in that the people who are tweeting about this, they view the world in absolutes, right? They think that if they think Daniel Andrews is doing a fantastic job, nobody else is allowed to think differently. And it shows that really concerning lack of openness towards difference of opinion, which we have frequently bemoaned on this show. So I think, yeah, definitely, as you say, the people who initially started pushing this movement, they're trying to make this this whole lockdown really ideological and brush the cost of lockdown under the rug, right, for political gain. But I think the sad thing is that it seems that a number of Victorians are kind of falling for this. You know, they wail at the sight of even a vague criticism of Daniel Andrews' policies, and there's a weeping and a gnashing of teeth if anyone even hints that Andrews might be out of touch with some parts of the Victorian populace. And I've like come across this in personal experience. So you've probably all seen like the joke events on Facebook circulating since the beginning of lockdown. Things like give Dan Andrews a virtual smack and get on the beers with Dan Andrews. And my personal favorite, give Dan Andrews a virtual nipple cripple. And so I had the audacity and the insensitivity to click interested on this event, and I received a barrage of comments and messages from a loyal I Stand With Dan supporting lady that I know. She called me immature, and she said she's disgusted at this childish behavior. So like, how dare I click on a joke event? How dare I participate in a joke at our beloved chairman Dan's expense? So I guess like beyond the actual political side of the I Stand With Dan business, whether Dan is wrong, whether Dan is right, it's pretty sad to see that people will actually just explode at any criticism of Dan, or even just a joke at his expense. It's a sad state of affairs when you can't make a joke at a politician's expense.
Yeah, I think it's very un-Australian when you can't joke about politicians. It's one of our real pastimes in this country. But I also think someone brought up a very good point about this to me when I was discussing it the other day, is it's almost, you look at it as a psychological element. It's kind of like an ego death that they can't face. The idea that this person that they thought was actually a great leader, who they had, idealized, that this government that they thought had their best interests at our heart actually might not. And to actually come to terms with that and face that reality is actually pretty hard. And for a lot of people, it's much easier to kind of reject even the reality that's staring them in the face, rather than facing up to it. So I think that's what a lot of what they're seeing, and where that kind of irrationality comes from, because it's kind of, they get angry when they think of facing that reality and meaning kind of like a little part of their world has to fall apart, and they have to kind of reconstruct it, which is much harder than actually just denying what's actually going on. But Luca, one of the things that was mentioned in the article, and one of the positive kind of outcomes from the New Zealand election, was that the New Zealand Libertarian Party actually gained 8% of the national vote, up from 0.5% previously. So a massive swing in their direction. Given what was kind of a soft alternative that was presented by the National Party in New Zealand, do you think that this shows there are many people in New Zealand who still believe in minimal government and lower taxes and, greater private enterprise?
100%. I think so. If nothing else, at the very least, there are definitely people looking for just any alternative to what's going on right now. Because what we've seen is a government that is, as Gideon said, administratively inept. And people are looking for an alternative where there's a government that really doesn't play that huge of a role in their lives, like Jacinda's has. And I think one of the big points that Gideon brought up in his article was that you can draw a lot of parallels between what's going on over there across the ditch and what's going on here in Victoria. And I think that raises an important point, that what's going on here in Victoria is, I think now we're seeing that people are getting mad. People are getting frustrated. I mean, we had 0 cases last night, 0 new cases, and yet we're still in lockdown, right? Whereas New South Wales has got maybe 1, 2 running around, right? And they're doing fine. People have been seeing the shifting goalposts that Andrew's been setting, right, for when we could come out of lockdown. They've been seeing this government absolutely destroy their economy, destroy their lives, right? More than coronavirus probably could have. And yet he's still in power. And I think people, at least in the next election, are going to try and find an alternative. They're going to try and find an alternative to this nut job that is currently in our government. I have no other words to describe him. That is currently in our government. So hopefully, I think this should give us hope that at least across there and across here, there are people who do want some kind of alternative.
Yeah, I think I really agree there. But Georgia, do you think that some people in New Zealand voted for Jacinda because they enjoyed the international praise she gets? She appears to kind of be the golden child of international leadership. The UN have consistently praised her. And do you think that this could have swayed some of the voters to keep her in power?
Yeah, I have no doubt, honestly. For me, it's a classic appeal from the left to the emotional side of politics, which we see all the time. People see Jacinda taking her baby to a UN speech and sort of think, oh, she must be a nice person, like I'll vote for her. And they completely forget about her actual policies and plans, even though they're borderline non-existent. But yeah, like you said as well, New Zealanders sort of see the rest of the world loving it and the celebrity status that she sort of brings, and they don't kind of want to give up that sort of attention. They seem to be really proud of that, I think.
Yeah, I think it has had a real powerful sway on the election outcome. She seems to be kind of untouchable from a global standpoint, and it's just the darling child of especially kind of the even global leftist media. They really, really love her. And I think especially for a small nation like New Zealand, getting all this international attention would be incredibly appealing, rather than, a not so well-known but effective leader from another country, leading their country, doesn't get much attention but actually gets stuff done. That's not as exciting as having a celebrity run your country. But now we are going to go to our famous segment, Viral Banter Battle. And we are not going to stop with tradition. Theodora and Luca have faced each other many times now. I think Luca has come out on top every time, unless someone correct me. Theodora, has he won every time now?
I think we may have had a draw once or twice.
Okay, Theodora.
I don't know. Look, I still feel cheated over that Dostoevsky round when you got like a 5-point question at the end. Okay, still feeling bitter.
Okay, well, Theodora, here is your chance to take back a victory and take back your pride from Luca. And I'll also give you some lifelines. Boston, you can go on Luca's team. If you can throw to Luca if you Boston, if you ever need an answer to a question, and Georgia, I will throw you on Theodora's team if she ever needs help with a question. So it's boys versus girls.
Luca, you can blame me if you lose.
100% will do. I would never take personal responsibility.
So this week is actually just general history. These questions are written by Zach, my husband, who is used to be a history tutor and is a PhD historian. So he put a little bit of thought into these, thinking about kind of basic history knowledge. So we'll start with the first question. Actually, do you guys have buzzers this week? I don't know if I reminded you to bring buzzers.
Dark Comrade, I have my Sarist flask and teaspoon.
I actually forgot to bring one. Can I just?
You can just grab 2 books behind you and smack them together.
Smack them? Oh, I have to pick my least favorite books now. Be a sec.
This is a hard decision for Theodora. Her least favorite.
So
books.
hard. So hard.
She doesn't have books on her shelf that she doesn't like.
I like how her bookshelf looks like it's about to burst.
Yeah, I'm really running out of space. My desk over there also has several piles of books, and I've got no shelves. Send help. I'll just go with Rosemary Sutcliffe. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Good improvised buzzer. Okay, so the first question is, where did Napoleon die? I'll give you a clue. It's an island. Theodora?
Was it like St. Helena?
Correct. The
Yes.
island of St. Helena. Okay, this one's a little bit tricky. When did the October Revolution occur according to Western calendars? Theodora?
November.
Correct.
Because there's a
Luca,
13-day difference.
She's taking an early lead. Okay, this one is a very IPA question, so you should know this. What year was the Magna Carta signed? I think I could hear John Roscombe screaming in the background.
Sorry, John.
Luca?
12 something. It was 12. I'm going to go with, it's between, I don't know, let's just go with like 12, 15.
Correct.
Oh!
Damn it.
Well done, Luca. Okay. What was the last of the US's 50 states to be admitted to the Union, and in what decade did this occur? Theodora?
I think it's Hawaii. And
It'll give you 1 point for Hawaii, and then who can get the decade?
I'll just say like the 1920s.
Incorrect, Luca?
1950s.
Correct.
Oh,
Okay, so it's 3-2. It's close. Okay. What percent of the vote did Abraham Lincoln get when he won the 1860 election? This one's quite hard. I'll give you a clue. It's under 50%.
oh, okay.
I don't know, 40%.
Close. Theodora?
35%.
It was 39.8. So I think I'll give Luca half a point for that.
We're going into half points now. I can't keep up with this.
Okay, we'll give you a full point, so it's 3-all. 3-all. Okay. Who was the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire? I'll give you, this is going to be a pretty good clue, so you got to get your buzzers ready. Okay, I'll give you the first letter of both names is R-A. Luca?
Something Augustus. It's something Augustus.
Yeah, well, that's kind of obvious.
Yes.
Something Augustus.
If I'm gonna take a guess, I don't know, one of the two brothers, like Romulus or Remus or something.
It was Romulus Augustus.
Oh, okay. I'll take the half point on that one.
Okay. Half point on that one. So it's 3.5 to 3. With the last question going in. Okay. So when and where was the first modern Olympics held? Theodora?
I believe it was 1896 in Athens.
Correct.
Oh, thank goodness.
How do you know that?
I watched a lot of horrible histories in my youth. That's all I'm going to say about that.
So I think Theodora actually takes away that victory today.
Yes,
well
finally.
Congratulations. I'm not hurt.
Put in a good fight, Luca.
So on that nail-biting finish, I would like to thank my guests for this amazing 23rd episode of Viral Banter. So thank you, Theodora, Luca, Georgia, and Boston for coming on the show.
Thank you, Renee.
Thanks very much for having us, Renee. And I still blame Boston for my loss. It's Boston's fault.
You should have jumped in on some, Abraham Lincoln question. Where were you, Boston?
None of them correct.
Where were you, Boston?
I would have said Waterloo from Napoleon.
Because it's an ABBA song? Okay, I see what you did there.
Okay, but If you are listening and you are not a member of Generation Liberty yet, what are you doing? You can join now at generationliberty.org.au for only $10, and you will get an awesome welcome pack, including books, stickers, and lots of other fun stuff, as well as updates on this show, upcoming events. We are starting to have events again, which is really awesome, and much, much more. Become part of Australia's biggest youth liberty movement today. But for now, thank you for listening, and make sure that you stay curious, stay philosophical, stay happy, and stay free.